Hi, and welcome to this fourth video in my data communication series. In this video, I'll be talking about the Gestalt principles. Again, it's primarily targeted for the data analyst and when they are doing data communication, data visualizations. But of course, you could always use that no matter what role you're in. But let's dig in. The core principle or the core idea of the Gestalt principles is that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. Meaning that you have all these small elements, but putting them together gives more meaning. It's not just an interpretation of the small element, but it's an interpretation of how they are spaced, located, colored, arranged together, and that provides the meaning. Originally, there are three principles or three laws within the Gestalt mindset thinking. It's similarity, proximity, and continuity. In this video, I'll be expanding a bit on these ones here and putting them into some more different settings so you can use it more practically in your everyday work or in your classes or in your visualizations in general. The first one I'll start out by talking about is the figure-ground relationship. It might sound a little bit complicated, but it's actually not that complicated. It is because we're looking at differentiation. We want to make sure we draw the attention to something. We want to have a focal point. We do that by contrasting colors, or we can do that by putting up different backgrounds, maybe a complex foreground and a simple background. That's the way that we make sure that we draw the proper attention. One of the classic examples is above me here, where you cannot distinguish the foreground and the background. Some might see a vase, some might see two faces facing each other, some might see a cube turning one direction, and others might see it another direction. And you can change your perspectives. There's something that you will see first, and then you'll have to make a conscious effort to unsee it. It's the same thing if you don't think about it in your visualizations. If you don't think about that there's something which is foreground that you want to have your attention drawn to, and something which should be the background or something which should be making the scene or setting the stage for it. Kind of like we were talking about when we were talking about data storytelling. So, focal point, ground, figure relationship. The next one is proximity or grouping of our objects. Objects together are usually grouped mentally because, well, if they're close together, then they're fitting. You can think about it as people standing in a room, people standing closer to each other, they are probably together. I have a couple of, or actually a lot of small dots here next to me, and I'm just going to show. Right now, you might see 2, 3, 4, 5 groups, but if we split them up, see what happens here. We have lines. So if this was a bar chart, the ones that are on our left, they have vertical bars. On our right, we have our horizontal bars. I've added the lines to better exemplify it, but if we jump back, sorry, that was a little bit quick back. There we go. If we jump back here, you can actually see the same thing because they are spaced a little bit closer horizontally and vertically. Down below, we also have the groupings, kind of like the room example I just used. You can also use it in many other graphical environments, and one of the examples is the Unilever logo. It's down here at the bottom. It's the combination of all the different brands that they have put together in a shape and there you have the U, which is the Unilever logo grouped together. That's also the way that you often can use word clouds when you do text analysis, proximity. If we then add some background, we add some encapsulations, some boxes rather, we can then break up these groupings. As you see, we've now created 2 groupings in each of them, each of the 3 areas, just by changing the background or putting a box around it. Remember that you can use it positively, draw the attention focus to some group of numbers, data that you have. Or if you don't think about it, you might inadvertently draw the focus to something which might not be there. That's also what we will be talking about in this next one here, where we're talking about similarity. We have some gray dots here, but we cannot distinguish them from each other. So if we have subsections, if we have maybe one group of people would segment older people or younger people or men versus women, etc. We might want them to group in subcategories. That's why we will try to do a little bit of recoloring. And as you can see, just by recoloring it, you will quickly distinguish each group from each other. I've also added some axes on the second part, because suddenly we have 3 groups. We have 3 groups which are either by proximity or 3 groups ordered by similarity. And that means you have actually a 3x3 matrix of data that you can display. Well, actually you have even more, because you have 2 dimensions, additional x and y axis that you can use. So in this way, we have our subdivisions, we have our additional dimensions when we're going to explain by utilizing our proximity and our similarity, apart from just the grid lines. When we then talk about grid lines, and I have a figure down here, if we start on the left, I have the keys. Well, actually, do I have keys? That's where our continuity thought processes jump in. We can see one full key, but it looks like there's something behind it. So that key behind it is what we imagine. That's good, that case here, because that's what we want. We want to exemplify that there are 2 keys. But if we don't want it, right now over in our x and y axis diagram, we have 2 lines and 6 dots. But what our mind tells us is this: we have 2 full lines, because we want, our mind sets this continuity, and we even have an intersection point, our small star at the top. It's not there. We have not described it. We have not said that it should be there. But because of the way things are arranged, we look for it. In one of the previous videos, I also talked about patterns, that the eye and the mind loves patterns, and we see them everywhere, even when they're not. This is an example of a pattern which is not there, but we see it anyway. It's also called the good principle of good continuation sometimes. We could use that positively, or it can trick us negatively. This is kind of the same as we see in this closure law, where we're filling in the blanks. I have a circle. Well, I don't actually have a circle if we're looking properly at it. I have a bunch of curved lines. I don't really have a box, but I have a couple of a number of straight lines and some corners. Our mind will want to fill in the gaps. So if we want that to happen, yes, great. It means that we can put small encapsulations in the corners without cluttering up our display of data, because the mind, the head, just fills in the blanks, all the empty spaces. It's also what we're looking a little bit at in what continuity or common faith. If we're looking at this, now we see there's two groups, and you can even imagine the thing with the greenish dots move further upwards. They are moving away from the others. And if we were to run this even further, you could say that disappear out of the screen. It's not happening, but that's our imagination, our continuity, or our common faith law that kicks in here. That one might not be that often applicable in our data visualizations, but the example I have next to it, our current status, 3 green bars. That's the last 3, say, quarters. What do we expect to happen in the coming 2 quarters? Well, the gray bars is what we will probably do. It's not what necessarily will happen. We don't have any argumentation for it, but it is most likely what the mind will imagine, what we will be expecting to happen. The last one I'll be talking about is connections. I have some dots here. You'd probably say, well, I have 2 green, 2 yellow, 4 big black, and 2 small black dots. Down below I have a group of dots in a grid setting. I can change the perception, I can change the linkage between these different dots by adding lines. Now I actually have 4 groupings of the dots above, and I have 1 line which I should be focusing on below. In this way, I change the perspective, I change the focus. Again, now we have 4 groups instead of 3, or we have a line and some outliers instead of just a plot. That means, in a summary, the whole is more than the parts. I talked about the foreground, where we pull something out, proximity, where we put things together, similarity, where we coloring or using icons, continuity, where we see things moving forward, closure, where things are filled in the blanks, common faith, where things are moving in a direction and we expect it to continue to move in that direction, and lastly, breaking it up with connections. That was it for this video here. I hope you enjoyed it and can use it in your data visualizations. See you in another. Bye.